Hello, today I want to tell you about Mr. Brush. Mr. Brush is one of our best friends in the art room. He helps us paint well, he is fun to use, and we can create some amazing artwork with him. So here's a little piece of paper I put at your art center sometimes when we use Mr. Brush, just to remind you of the right way to take care of him. Mr. Brush always likes it if you hold him like you do your pencil. So holding him like your pencil, you want to hold it right behind the metal part. You want to make sure that your grip is not too close down here so you don't get paint all in your fingers. It's not way back here because it gives you very little control when you paint. That'd be like trying to write your name while holding on to the eraser of your pencil. So you want to hold it right behind the metal part right here, just like your pencil. Another thing that's really important, we want to make sure we use Mr. Brush nice and smoothly. He likes to dance like this, very slow and smooth. He doesn't like to be pushed really hard and smashed. Sometimes, if Mr. Brush gets pushed too hard, it can smash his hair, so the brush turns out looking like this, which is not going to be a very good painting brush. He really especially loves it if you keep the paint in his hair. We don't want to get paint all the way up our pencil, all the way up our paintbrush back here, because it gets all over your hands and that doesn't help us do our painting if it's back here. We want to make sure it's in the hair. So when you dip your paint, you just get it right in the hair. You never should have the metal touching your paint. So, like I said a little bit ago, he loves to have long, smooth brush strokes. So don't ever scrub them like you do a sponge or something hard. And he always loves to get a bath before dipping him into a new color, so we don't mix up our colors. So I'll show you more about that in a minute. He loves making all kinds of lines. So here's some different lines that you could always try with Mr. Brush. We have a straight line, wavy line, zigzag, dotted, which would be where you just pick up your paintbrush off the paper, diagonal, curved, and here's some more. You can see a thick or a thin line. You could press very lightly, barely touching down the paper, or you can make it more dark where you have more paint and a thicker line. Swirly, zigzag, some of these are the same. Sometimes I'll show you when you lay your brush on its side instead of its tiptoes, it makes a thicker, darker line. All right, let's get towards the painting with Mr. Brush. So for your painting, you are going to need a water cup, a paintbrush, and I brought a couple just to show you some different sizes and different kinds, and you need some paints. These are watercolor paints, and they have all the different rainbow right here of colors. And sometimes when you start to see this white right here, it doesn't mean the paint is out, but when it gets completely empty and you don't see any more color left, we can replace these. We can refill them to get more color. So just make sure if you were using this one, you would just get the paint from the sides, not right in the middle. Okay, so let me show you a couple different kinds of brushes. This is the regular Mr. Brush I showed you. He's a little bit skinnier. This is more of a rounded brush. He paints a thicker line. And then this is a little bit bigger one. He paints a wider, thicker line. And then this was that Mr. Brush that had not been taken care of well. A lot of you will notice back by the sink area, I have a place that says, "Poor Mr. Brush." That's what happens when we don't take care of our brushes. We have to put them back there. So people can be reminded to take good care of them. Okay, so let's get painting. I am going to move my paints right up here so you can still see your paper as well as the paints. And I'm going to start with Mr. Brush. So with watercolor paints like this, right now they're dry. There's nothing on my finger because without water, they don't work. That's why they're called watercolors. So I have to dip my brush in the water first, not very hard, and then I'm gonna twirl it in the paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not pressing very hard, making sure to keep the paint in Mr. Brush's hair. Then I can practice my lines. Okay, there's a swirly one. I'm gonna get some more paint. I could do a dashed line. I could do a dotted line. And notice it just has to do with how I'm taking care of my brush. I could do a zigzag. Or look at this. If I hold him up on his tiptoes, do you see how you just see the tail end of Mr. Brush? He's pointing up to the sky. If he's on his tiptoes, it makes a really skinny line. If I put him down on his side very slowly, look how much thicker it gets. Now, if I wanted to change colors, I'm gonna make sure I rinse out Mr. Brush really well, twirl him in the water cup, and then I'm gonna switch colors. I'm gonna twirl over here in the paint, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I could come in and add a different color. Now look what happened. I accidentally touched my blue. Anytime you touch wet paint to wet paint, it's gonna start to run together. So if I put a little bit of yellow down here, they might start to run together and blend. And if you remember in the dot book, Vashti talked about how if she mixed blue with yellow, it made green. And you'll see that you can experiment with mixing colors too with your watercolors. Just make sure you rinse your brush before you go back to get another color, okay? We don't ever want to mix them in here. Like I would not want to put blue in here because it ruins the yellow for everybody else. So I think this is a good start for painting. Feel free to experiment, give stuff a try, see what you can make. If you want to make a polka dot, you could, like in the dot book, all you have to do is do a little circle and you could fill it in. You could do some smaller dots. You could just tap, tap, tap very gently with your brush to make little polka dots. Totally up to you. Okay, so just a reminder, Mr. Brush, he loves it when you take good care of him. He can always do a much better job if you take care of him. Hold him like your pencil. Don't smash his hair. Keep the paint in his hair. And he loves long, smooth brush strokes instead of scratching and scrubbing like that. Make sure you give him a bath before changing colors. And make sure you try different kinds of lines. All right, thanks for listening.